Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Lankford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests. Hey everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Lankford, and today we're doing another installment of the Tinker's Workbench. I've got my brother, Kyle Lankford, here with me, and we are going to talk about the ultimate squirrel rifle. How you doing, brother?
I'm good.
We're just sitting here in his shop. We just got done going through a couple of things we're going to talk about in this episode are setting up squirrel guns and kind of things to think about when you're selecting pieces for your setup. We just swapped one of the guns in the test over to make it a more efficient killing machine from how it was. So kind of what brought me on this. Well, I guess before that, Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you might be qualified to help out on this episode.
I don't know that I'm the most qualified, but I think
the handiest for sure.
Yeah, available. I think that may be the best word. I've been to a couple long-range classes. I've spent a lot of time behind a scope and pulling a trigger, and I've trained a lot. I've been through basic long-range at Badlands Training Facility in Granfield, Oklahoma. I went through that in 2016, and then I went back in 2018 and took another course. I think these are all 5-day classes. I took Urban Sniper in 18, and then I took the basic sniper class in 2021. And I'm also a federal firearms instructor, which is a 2-week class that I graduated from in 2019. And then I'm also a Glock armorer and an AR-15 armorer. But I've tinkered with guns, and I've been building guns and bullets for quite a while.
You're a pretty avid long-range shooter.
Yeah.
Got the steel out to, 550 off the back porch?
Yep.
It's pretty handy. It's fun to come over and shoot with you. Learned a lot coming over and shooting with you over the years.
I call that my Kyle Lankford mid to close range school of shooting, and you'd be surprised at how much you could teach somebody in a couple of hours, boost their confidence, and send them out and go deer hunting, and they can, pretty confidently shoot 350, 400, 500 yards.
So what had kind of got this, I'd been thinking about and talking about doing this episode for quite a while. And the main thing to me that drew me to it was over the years, which I'm a lot the same. I really like to tinker on guns. I think I built my first 1022 back in about 2008 or 2009 in college and jeweled the trigger parts on it and got it down to like a 2-pound trigger because I couldn't afford to buy parts. So I could afford some files and some sandpaper though, and gave it a nice trigger and made it a pretty good shooting little gun. But I've had some guns that you just can't seem to miss a critter with. I mean, you point it in its general direction, you pull the trigger, and the critter falls out. And at the same time, I've had really nice guns that were the exact opposite, that would shoot just lights out, shooting at a paper target. But then you take it out in the field, and you go start shooting at animals, and you just can't hit anything with it. And that's frustrating. I generally consider myself a pretty decent shot, and it upsets me a lot whenever I consistently miss game that I think I should be killing.
I think you're onto something with what you're doing with these Rugers and getting your mechanical offset as low as possible and getting your line of sight and your bullet closest as it can get. I think you're on the right track there.
Kind of one thing I had noticed talking about the mechanical offset. So some of the 22s I'd had, it seemed like the lower I had the rings and the closer the scope was to the barrel, just the better killing machine it was. And I've had some guns that just by the design of the way the receiver's built, I don't care how low the rings are, you can't get the scope down low on the barrel.
Right. Well, I mean, if you got a 1022 that's capable of shooting quarter-minute groups at 100 yards, it doesn't do any good if you're 3 or 4 inches off in between. Mm-hmm. If you've got a 0 to 50, but you're 2.5 inches off at 20 or 15, it makes it really hard, and it's hard to know exactly how far that squirrel or whatever it is, that small target you're shooting at.
Unless you're carrying around a rangefinder and a dope chart.
Right. That makes it very difficult.
we kind of need to break down what's going on, what we're talking about with this mechanical offset. So you got to think about a bullet coming out of the gun. Think about it coming out of the barrel and being like a fishing pole. Imagine a fishing pole with a half-pound sinker on the end of it. It goes straight for a while, and then it starts to drop off, and more. So that's your bullet trajectory. It's like a lightly loaded bent fishing pole.
Yeah.
Now your scope, on the other hand, is a laser beam, and they're not starting out at the same spot either. No. So the laser beam is setting higher, and to think about it on scale, I like to think about things blown up. So if you put that laser beam a foot above, and you aim it down to where it's pointed at the third eye, well, it's going to hit the third eye out, but it's also hitting the tip because it's bent.
Yeah.
So when you graph that fishing pole, you're going to be hitting low, 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 low. It's going to intersect, then you're going to be high, and then it's going to drop back off, and then it's going to cross back over again.
Right.
And the lower you get those rings, the more you bring that laser down and get it closer to where the handle would be, and the less that offset is.
Right.
Which, to a point, you almost want a little bit.
Sure, it can help you with your distance to a degree. What you want is just enough that it keeps you on your target for as long as possible, however big your target is. You look at an AR-15, I mean, it was built to shoot humans, as crazy as that is.
Yeah.
And if you zero that gun at 50 yards with the mechanical offset it has, it's never off target to 250. And that's why that wasn't just an accident. Those guns were built with a high mechanical offset because you're shooting a target that stands up and down primarily, straight up and down. So you had a large room for error, but if you zeroed at 50, you didn't get off back until over 250 yards out.
I did not know that.
Yep.
So to set up this test, what I decided I was going to do, I had built last year. I decided I was going to build. I mean, I've had nice shotguns. I've had nice deer rifles, and I'd had some pretty nice 22s, but I'd never just full out built a 22. And I mean, people don't look at you sideways if you're a duck hunter and you've got a $1,200, $1,500 duck gun, or if you're a quail upland hunter and you've got a $2,000 over under. Like, no one bats an eye. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna throw some money at 22. I'm gonna build something nice. It's the gun I carry all the time. I built a pretty much custom gun. I had some 1022 parts laying around from different guns I'd tinkered on over the years, and I had a Ruger factory plastic trigger housing, and then I had a Ruger factory bolt, and then from there I bought a Brownells billet receiver with the rail machined into it, and a Kid bolt spring kit, a Buyer. I found the lightest barrel I could that also was supposed to shoot really well. Buyer custom barrels, which is a little mom and pop shop out of Oregon or Washington. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they built and sent me a lights out little barrel. It's a machined aluminum barrel with a really radical cut set of grooves in it.
Yeah, it kind of goes back and forth, kind of spiral, but
It's
kind of
spiral,
reverses.
but it reverses.
Yeah,
and,
that's sharp.
And it's threaded as well if you want to put a suppressor on it. And at the time I built it, it was far and well below anything you could buy, like as far as weight was on the market. I also put a kid drop-in trigger parts kit in that factory housing. I knew I wanted low rings. I had this theory, but I hadn't really done any testing. But I found the lowest rings I could, which they're actually they're discontinued ring, and they're not. I don't love them, but they are super low. And I put a Leupold 3x9x40 scope on it. Set it up, and the thing shoots lights out. Like it was just from the time I zeroed it and started shooting squirrels with it, it was just a laser beam type gun that you point it in the general direction of the squirrel in a tree, and the squirrel fell out on the first shot or two.
Yeah.
So I was super happy with it, which just kind of brought me back to, well, there is something here to what my theory was. And so for the test, I took that gun, and then I took another Ruger 1022 I had laying around, and I took the highest strings I could possibly find, which were the shoot-through style bolt-on two-piece that you can still use your iron sights under your scope, but it does set your scope up high. But that's what I was wanting for the test, and so I set that gun up with a Burris 3x9x40 rimfire scope, another quality scope, and I took both these guns and I made some targets out. I labeled targets. I bench rest shot both of them at 20 yards, and I zeroed them.
Mm-hmm.
Then I put targets from 10 at 10, 20, 30, 40 in 10-yard increments all the way out to 80 yards. After I zeroed them at 20, and both targets were labeled for high-ring gun, 0 to 20, low-ring gun, 0 to 20, so I wouldn't get the targets mixed up. And I shot three shot groups at every one all the way out. Then I re-zeroed both guns at 50 yards, and I turned around and pulled the targets off, put new targets on that were correctly labeled for the gun and what the zero distance was, and then I shot those all the way out. 3 shot groups as well. I brought all the targets home and kind of compiled my data and decided, well, I'll just graph this out and see what it looks like on the graph. And it really kind of surprised me as far as what I found. So on the high ring gun that was zeroed at 50 yards, or it had just over 2 inches point of impact change, it would start low. See, it'd start about 3/4 of an inch low, and then it'd go up to 1 1/4 inch high, and then drop back down and cross back over again from 10 to 60. The 70 and 80 yard data I ended up just dropping off just because there was enough bullet drop that it was kind of moot at that point. As far as usable data, 10 to 60 I feel like is pretty good for a squirrel gun.
Sure.
And
that's a long shot.
Yeah. But hey, when that squirrel's timber and he's 3 trees over and it's a 10-22, you can throw some lead at him.
Yeah.
But the same high ring gun at 20 with a 20 yard zero was 1 5/8 inch difference. Point of impact change. Highest point to lowest point on the graph. On the low ring gun, the 20 yard zero only had 1 1/8 inch change. And at a 50 yard zero, it had a 3/4 inch change. And that's from high to low. So you're never more than 3/8 high or 3/8 low.
Yeah.
And so after kind of studying the graph data, I decided, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take this low ring gun since I'm trying to kill squirrels with it. Looking at the graph, I think it'd be better at 35 yards. So I took the same gun, basically did the same test again with a 35 yard zero, and that got the gun's point of impact changed 5/8 of an inch. So if you're shooting at a pinhead target, you're never between 10 and 60 yards. You're never more than just over a 1/4 inch high or a 1/4 inch low group.
That's minute a squirrel.
Off that'll hit a squirrel.
Yeah.
At that point, if you're missing, you can't blame it on the gun.
No, but the other,
the just over 2 inch.
Yeah, that's
a significant. I mean, if you think about it, if there's a squirrel laying on a branch, and you can see the top half of his body, you're looking at 1 inch. So if you're shooting in the middle of that inch, you've got a 1/2 inch you can miss either way. And if you're 1 1/4 inch high, you just totally missed the squirrel, even though at 30 yards, you were aiming right at what you thought you were trying to hit.
Depending on where you've zeroed their gun, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
It does, for sure. And, for what it's worth, your normal sights are your best bet, honestly, for small game. I mean, if you're capable of shooting them, most people aren't, myself included. It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of practice to know exactly where to draw those beads up. You can do it, but you're going to shoot hundreds of rounds a month just to stay sharp with that gun. But honestly, it's your best bet.
Yeah.
But when it comes to a scope, of course, the closer you can get it to your bore axis, the better you're going to be.
One argument I have for a scope that's a personal reason, and half the reason why I've went to, especially hunting in the summertime, is if I'm hunting with a shotgun, I'm going to carry a set of binoculars. So now I've got a bino harness on, an extra heavy pair of 10 or 12X binoculars, and in the summertime, man, I'm already packing a vest around, a shotgun at that point that weighs 8 or 9 or 10 pounds, heavy shotgun, you're starting to really pack a load. Whereas I think that rifle I set up weighs like 4 pounds and 5 ounces with the glass on it.
Yeah, and 22 shells weigh a lot less than 12 gauge shells.
Yeah. Yeah, and with having the scope, I just eliminated having to carry the binoculars and the bino harness.
You've got magnification right there.
Which is handy.
I'd way rather shoot with a scope. I'll take my chances with the mechanical offset, as most would.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump back a little bit now that we've established what works in the testing as far as making the gun shoot and hit where it's supposed to hit. Because, I mean, you can have you can have a bench rest built gun with a high scope on it that is just tearing ragged holes at 50 yards. But if it's moving around all over the place, it's not really doing you any good, high to low, depending on the yardage.
Sure.
But now that we've kind of established that, let's talk a little bit more about components. So on this gun we just set up today, it is the what was the high ring gun on the test. It's just a little 1022 carbine. We took the high rings back off of it, and we put a factory Ruger rail back on it, and then we put a set of Leupold, just a basic set of Leupold low aluminum rings on it. Put the 3x9x40 burst scope back on it, and I'm gonna say that if it had a bull barrel on it, it's got a standard profile carbine barrel on it. But if it had a bull barrel on it, I think it'd probably have a little over an eighth of an inch to clear.
It'd clear with plenty of room.
But it wouldn't be excessively high either.
No, it would not. I wouldn't want to go any lower.
So when it comes to scopes, let's break it down as simple as we can. So a 3x9x40, that's a 3x magnification that adjusts up to a 9x magnification, and the 40 is the size of the
objective.
The objective in millimeters.
At the end, which would be closest to the end of the barrel.
Yep. And what's the advantages of a larger compared to a smaller objective?
Arguably, a lot of this is you're getting what you paid for. I believe your sales pitch would be the larger glass at the end would gather more light, and it would be a brighter picture. It could be you could have a wider field of view, and it should, in theory, gather more light. That doesn't mean that a $39 Tasco is, if you had a 40 millimeter Tasco, that it would be brighter than a 32 millimeter Burris or Vortex or something like that. That's, a $150 scope. Your better glass is always going to outperform your cheaper glass. But the end, that objective size should be field of view mostly, and then arguably a little bit of light dispersion.
I've killed a pile of squirrels with a 4x32 Tasco.
Oh, they work.
So don't think you can't kill them with one.
No, not at all.
But at the same time, whenever I started looking into trying to figure out what glass I wanted to put, kind of in that not crazy high end, but quality glass. I went to the big box sporting goods store, and that had a good selection and said, set me out this one, and this one on the counter, please. And they did. They obliged me, and picked them up and looked at them side by side, and I went with what definitely was the clearest and had the best picture, the clearest glass and the best illumination the way it looked through my eye. Like that's how I picked what I went with, and I'd recommend doing that if you got a place like that handy.
Absolutely, a lot of times just looking through different scopes, you see different colors, more crisper. And that's what your high-end optics have, the coatings on the lenses, where you can see, especially in low light, where you can break down the difference in colors. And that's what makes it easier to spot a squirrel on tree bark, is when you can see the color differences in lower light conditions, or even when it's super bright. That might be the trick too. But that's your high-end to low-end stuff. I mean, you can do it with a Tasco that you spent $29 on. It just makes it a little easier to find a squirrel, or whatever it is you're looking for, when you got a little better quality glass.
Okay, so next on the idea of scopes is adjustable objectives and parallax. You wanna touch on that for us?
So parallax, for the most part, on a rim fire, it may be overkill. It may be something that you really usually wouldn't use. Most rim fire specific scopes are going to come with a fixed parallax that's fixed in the objective end of the scope at 50 yards, roughly. That's what they're trying to do, is they're going to have a 50-yard fixed parallax.
Let's back up and let's talk about what parallax is, as far as like a working using definition would be.
So according to the internet, parallax is the apparent displacement, or the difference in apparent direction of an object as seen from two different points, not on a straight line with the objective. So that's the definition of it. For a scope, how I've always kind of explained it is to people that don't understand what parallax is how the light comes through your scope and what that objective does, and how you take your parallax out would be to put the object you're looking at and your crosshairs on the same plane. And when you can adjust your parallax, it's like stacking two pieces of paper on top of each other. They're on top of each other. So when you look through the scope, if you have no parallax, if your parallax has been taken out, if your gun was setting perfectly still and you could move your eyeball around in the objective of that scope, in the eyepiece of that scope, your crosshair should not move on your target.
So like when you're looking through the scope and you can see you can see that black ring where it's like the outside of the picture that you can't see inside the scope. If you move your head around in a circle to move that ring around, your crosshairs
should not be moving.
Never move off the target. The crosshair should be a steady, still thing with your target.
And that's where your adjustment of parallax comes in. If you have parallax in your scope, then your crosshairs will be moving on your target. To have your parallax out, which would be adjusting it to, and just because it says, a lot of these scopes will have an adjustment up here that says 50 yards, 75 yards, 100 yards, 300 yards, and it'll go to infinite. Just because it says that doesn't mean it's true either. I've got a $2,000 scope that it's not perfect. I promise you. 300 yards is more like 450, and 450's on that infinity mark, and it's the same all the way out from that point on, and it goes out to like 600 before it goes to infinity. But don't trust that. But also, again, I'm not sure that we're not off in the weeds a little bit, to a degree, for a 50-yard gun that's set at 50. What amount of parallax you could have in your scope if your parallax is set at 50 and it's a little off would be pretty small amount.
The reason I was wanting to talk about this and to help people understand a general idea of parallax is to understand that if you go out and you buy because actually what I had to do whenever I bought my Loophole was they didn't have the rimfire model in stock anywhere. They were sold out. It was like a nationwide back order. Couldn't find it. They had the exact same reticle in the standard rifle scope. I could find it everywhere, and I even found it on sale, actually. The difference was it's factory set at 100-yard parallax compared to the rimfire model's 50-yard parallax. And you can actually change that on a non-adjustable, on a set scope.
I remember you telling me about this.
Like on the Loophole, they've got the gold ring on the end, and I actually bought a rubber strap wrench, and you pull that ring off on the black past the gold on the end of the objective, and then once you pull that off, then there's a little spanner wrench nut that your objective lens is attached to, and you can screw that in and out just like if it was an adjustable objective end bell objective scope.
Right.
That you just grab the end of the outside of it and twist it.
Right.
It's the same idea and the same mechanism.
Yep.
And so I just adjust it to a 50-yard parallax and then put that end ring back on. I'm saying that to say, again, that don't just go out and buy a rifle scope because it's a nice scope if it's set with a 100-yard parallax, because you're going to have problems, because when you're leaning up against a tree and you're shooting out of position, like you often are when you're shooting at a squirrel in a tree.
At 20 yards.
At 20 yards, you're going to have problems.
Right.
Because those crosshairs can move 3/4 of an inch or an inch
or
more.
If you had a scope that had parallax, and if you didn't, if you looked through it and thought, man, it looks clear if I just leave it at 100, 150, or 200 yards, and then you're trying to shoot stuff at 20, and it's not you, it's not the gun, it's not the scope, it's just the parallax in the scope that's giving you this false sense that, your group's 4 inches, and that's very possible. And a lot of times, especially in a long range setting, if you don't take your parallax out and you're trying to shoot 500, 600, 700 yards, you're talking, it could be 4 or 5 feet in either direction, which means an 8-foot group, just because your parallax is stuck at 100 and you forgot to adjust your parallax, and you're trying to shoot 600, 700 yards, and you shoot left 4 foot, then you shoot right 4 foot, then your instructor comes up and thumps you on the head and says, "Hey, fix your parallax, dummy," and then it fixes the problem. It's as simple as that.
So let's talk about ammo selection a little bit, because when it comes to 22s, there's tons and tons and tons of different types of 22 ammo, and I've tried shooting quite a bit of it. over the years, and 22s, especially 1022s, seem to be really picky on what they like to shoot a good group with. Most of them, from my experience, if you just go by the bulk 550 round hollow points, they'll shoot, but
Gun will cycle.
the gun will cycle, but they don't group.
Yeah.
They do not group well at all. They're cheap. That's nice. But when you're trying to shoot a squirrel, it goes back to the something I've heard you talk about quite a bit is when we're over here shooting is like when you go to these sniper schools, they teach you a whole bunch of little bitty things that help improve your shooting. And yeah, that one thing might not do just a whole lot to your group, but if you consistently do that, and then you stack another thing that consistently tightens your group up a little bit, and you keep stacking all these things that consistently tighten your group up, all of a sudden you've shrunk your group in half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ammo is a huge part of that. I mean, long range especially has a lot to do with, and just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's that your gun's going to love it either. And just because your other Ruger 1022 shoots it really well doesn't mean this one will either. So don't throw a good gun out just because it doesn't shoot the most expensive ammo that they had at the gun shop. Some guns like some ammo, some guns don't. Other guns do. And I've yet to find any gun that likes everything. And I've yet to find any ammunition that shoots good in any other gun. At least to a degree. You'll always find each gun will have one little set of ammunition that it shoots best, and I'm sure 22s, and I don't have a ton of experience with 22s, but I have got a lot of experience with gun barrels and ammunition, and there's definitely a huge difference in how they shoot.
Like there's Aguila and all types of high-end 22 match grade, super match grade,
Elay stuff, yeah.
Yeah. What seems to work well for me, if I was going to pick one, if you made me pick one 22 ammo to just have and shoot through everything, it would probably be Federal Auto Match.
Yeah.
And the reason being is it tends to group really well through just about everything I shoot it through. I mean, you're going to find stuff that groups better.
And that's a bulk ammo, isn't it?
It is I call it a semi-bulk.
It's like a 325 pack.
It's a 325 pack.
It's about twice the price as normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's half as many bullets for roughly the same price as your normal brick ammo.
I've had good luck with that. It's pretty hard to beat CCI. With a lot of the guns I've shot,
CCI does make good ammo for the money as well.
Like the mini mags and the stingers.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of guns that shot those really well. They're definitely a lot more expensive.
I think CCI is really good at having consistent powder charges. A lot more so than a lot of other.
Unless you get into the high end, like Ely Prime stuff, like that kind of stuff. And I run around with a guy that was doing competition 22s, and he would go as far as buying just flats of this stuff, and then he would measure them out on a gram scale, or a grain scale, just like you would powder charges, whole bullets, and he would keep them in lots.
Group them in lots.
Yeah, and he claimed that it really did help. Which,
well, if you're thinking, oh well, there's not that big of a difference with my bulk bucket of bullets, load up a 25 round mag, and then find a kid and say, hey, mag dump this at this pop bottle, 25 yards away in front of this berm, and you'll hear pop 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 pop. It's not. You'll hear highs and lows. Like the bullet pitch will be different.
Yeah,
there'll be multiple pitches and tones through that 25 round mag. You'll be surprised.
Depending on how cheap that bulk ammo is, that 1022 may or may not cycle it completely through the mag.
Yeah,
depending on each gun and depending on each type of bullet. The 1022's got to be pretty dirty for the most part to not.
They're typically, which one thing I have kind of got into, and one thing I did kind of different so there's 3 different chamber cuts that you can have for a 1022 that's kind of standard. There's like a standard cut, which is what your 1022 carbine's going to have, which is a pretty loose chamber as far as how far the bullet is whenever you insert your bullet in the chamber, and it's in a loaded position. how far the end of the bullet is from the lands, the grooves of the rifling. You also have a match chamber, and then there's a bends chamber, which I believe a bends chamber is a little bit in between. I could have that wrong. I think a bends is a little bit looser than a match. I think it's kind of an in between. And whenever I had my barrel, when I ordered my barrel, I had him open it up just down from match, because something I've noticed is it seems like the match barrels shoot a little bit more accurate, but they're a little bit more picky on ammo, and they don't. I've had more failure to feeds and failure to eject issues with a match chamber.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's going to happen. You're going to have a little better accuracy, but you're going to give up a little bit. You know, you're going to have to keep that barrel a little cleaner. You're going to have to run a little higher quality ammunition that's going to have a little less carbon residue, or clean it more often. One or the other. You know, just depending on how much you like to clean your gun.
One thing I will say about that gun that I built is it is an absolute joy to pack around through the woods, because it weighs, I mean, just next to nothing. If you're used to pack, I mean, it's half the weight of most of my shotguns.
Yeah, that's, you know, I packed a deer rifle around today, and I'll tell you right now, I don't like packing heavy guns. I don't like packing long guns. I don't like, you know, there's a standard deer rifle size, and to compare anything to that, if it's longer, if it's got a suppressor on it, if it's got a heavier barrel, if the stock's a little bulkier, it really does. When you pack it around, as much as most of you guys are going to be carrying these guns around, you're not going to want to buy some big heavy bull-barreled gun that may be a little more accurate, maybe not, just because. I mean,
that first Ruger 1022 I built, I wish I still had it. I traded it off. It was a nice gun. It was a factory Ruger Target.
I remember that gun.
It had it's almost like a purple blued. It had like a real light twisted fluted factory Ruger hammer forged barrel, and a Fagan, like super adjustable comb height, adjustable. Everything on the stock, thumbhole stock, was adjustable on it. Beautiful gun, shot really well. But man, you talk about heavy, and the barrel on that gun was so heavy, you just about had to carry it. Like if you were going to sling it, it was so top heavy that you about had to sling it barrel down.
Yeah, I remember that gun.
It shot good, but it was not fun to pack.
Yeah, I tried to. Again, I had a sniper rifle that I tried to deer hunt with that had a suppressor on it. Had a 24-inch barrel and a very heavy suppressor on it. It shot great once you got it where you were going, but you gave up a lot getting it there.
Have you been following along anything on the current affairs of the ATF and tax stamps and that stuff?
I try not to. I've heard that they're getting rid of the tax stamp, but now that I've heard that now they've introduced a new tax stamp that's going to be like $5,000. I don't know. That could have been completely off the wall.
What would be really nice, man, if a guy was going to build the ultimate Squirrel 22, if you were to order you'd have to have an SBR. It'd have to be an SBR, unless the suppressor was drilled and pinned. But if you had like an 11-inch barrel with a 6-inch suppressor on it, to where you had a suppressed 17-inch barrel 1022, that would be the ticket.
Yeah. I knew a guy that had internally, like the barrel was actually part of the suppressor, and it was slick. You'd have never even known it. It didn't look.
It's just like a sleeve.
Yeah, it's just a sleeve that goes over it. And the barrel, he just drilled the barrel out, and then it had holes cut in a spiral through it. But he drilled the barrel out a little bit bigger, and then fit a sleeve over the top of it. And man, that gun shot really well. He only had like 5-6 inches of barrel, I think, is all that he really had. So the bullet, no matter what bullet you shot through it was never supersonic. You couldn't get supersonic out of a 5-inch barrel. So it was basically a pistol, but it was inherently accurate. Man, it was crazy. And it was a fun gun to shoot.
Well, you look at the Ruger, like the Ruger Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 series of semi-automatic pistols. They're super accurate. I mean, I don't think you need a lot of barrel. And
No. That's something that growing up, you're always told longer barrel was better accuracy. And when, you get a little older and you go to some schools and you figure some stuff out and do a little research, and that longer barrel, arguably, I mean, it's easier to shoot accurately at long distance, but the only way it's increasing your accuracy is by increasing your speed, which makes it easier to shoot long distance because you don't have the bullet drop. But it doesn't change the accuracy of the bullet itself. It just speeds it up enough so that you don't have as much drop. So I've got a question.
What's that?
What do you guys do on these 10/22s to increase or to decrease trigger pull? Or because that's always seemed like my limited experience with the 10/22 is
The factory triggers kind of suck.
they kind of suck.
Yeah,
So
I think factory, most of them are around like a 7 to 8 pound pull, which is heavy.
That's pretty heavy.
That's pretty heavy. There's a lot of different options. I mean, it's Ruger 10/22 is kind of like the small block Chevy of rimfire guns. I mean, there's 20 aftermarket companies that build any part that you want or more. From my experience, if you want to do it cheaply, Ruger makes a factory. It's called a BX trigger. I want to say they're around $75, but it's a whole plastic. It's the whole plastic trigger group assembly. So you just basically pop out 2 pins, drop the old one out, put this one in its place, put the 2 pins back in, and they're usually about a 2.5 to 3 pound trigger pull.
Oh, that's doable.
They're a fair trigger, pretty serviceable. There's definitely a lot better out there, but for the money, it's hard to beat it.
Yeah, I would think 2.5 pounds would be more than doable for a squirrel gun.
They're still a little grainy. They're not like a super smooth, but at the same time, like you can order a full replacement, a full housing replacement kit, or Volquartsen. Volquartsen makes tons of stuff for 10/22s. There's multiple different options, and you can get spring kits. You can buy just hammers and sears. Like I said, on my gun I built, I kind of went mid range. It's not a bench rest gun, so it doesn't need to have a fully adjustable down to 1 pound trigger. Like you don't need that for a squirrel gun.
You wouldn't want that.
No, I mean you could adjust it back up, but it's overkill.
Yeah.
The kid drop-in parts in the newer style. So this gun we just set up, it's an older rifle, and it still has the aluminum trigger housing. And the aluminum housings, for whatever reason they say, don't take as well to modifications. They just weren't quite as tight as spec. A lot of times the pinholes are a little bit wallered out from repeated mag dumps from the neighbor kid borrowing it. And the newer poly housings do a lot better for modifications. And so I bought a kid drop-in component group, which is hammer, sear, trigger itself, springs, and they're pretty easy to take apart and put back together. If you get stuck with it, I mean, there's tons of YouTube videos on it. Another thing I like to do on all of them that I feel like helps a lot just with the shootability, whenever you take your rifle out of the stock, you've got your rear pin that goes, it's your buffer pin. Your bolt bangs into it whenever it hits the back of its travel. That pin is exactly a 1/4 inch diameter. And so what you can do, the cheap way to do it, is to go to the parts store and buy like a 4-inch long nylon 1/4 inch bolt. Then you take a hacksaw or Dremel or whatever you want to, and you cut the shank of it off that's not threaded to the width of the receiver. You push that metal one out, you push the nylon one in, and it really reduces the felt vibration in the receiver while it's cycling. And it makes your gun last longer too. I mean, it takes the shock out of it.
You're not banging metal on metal.
Yeah. And once again, Volquartsen. I think that gun I've got right now, I put a Volquartsen in it just because I felt like making something special. But it's basically a piece of rubber hose with a small, like an 1/8 inch steel pin that goes through the rubber hose.
Yeah.
And I think it might work a little bit better, but it's not a huge difference. Another thing on 10/22s that I like to do on setup, just from personal experience, is the poly trigger housings. They come with a mag release that sticks down, and so what ends up happening is if you carry cross-bodied sling like I do, and you're carrying it with a mag in it, I carry my gun when I'm hunting, mag in, bolt locked open, on safety. That's just how I carry it. That way if I walk up to a tree, all I got to do, I don't even have to look at the gun. I can use my fingers and pop the bolt closed, chamber around, pop it off safety, and never take my eyes off the squirrel when I'm shooting.
Right.
And it's safe. No one wants to have an accident in the woods. A squirrel's not worth it.
No.
especially when you're going through brush and crossing fences and everything else. So try to maintain as much safety as I can. But I don't like. I've lost probably 4 magazines.
And they're probably $40-$50. What are they?
It's been a while since I bought one. I've got a pretty good collection of them. I don't think they're quite that much.
I just don't feel like you could. I'd be surprised if they were less than 40.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds high, but
I want to say they're about 25, 30. But what you can do with those poly housings, the older guns that have the metal trigger housings, they have a flat flush magazine release. And if you can find one of those, I actually think that this gun right here, I stole the factory one out of this gun and put it in the gun I built just to have that nicer one. But you can take a Dremel tool and or hacksaw and a file, just however you want to do it. But you can actually cut the newer style ones off and clean them up and make them a flush mount, and it'll keep you from losing magazines. Because if you don't, you will lose magazines.
I had a Browning X-Bolt in a 308 that I did the same thing. It had a mag release. It had a little 3-round dropout mag, and man, I lost that magazine, and you couldn't find them. They were on back order. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. Ruger actually makes all their guns come with a black poly magazine factory, but they actually make a clear magazine. That's what I like to run in my gun, just because sometimes in the heat of the moment, shooting at squirrels, multiple squirrels timbering out of a tree, and you're shooting around, it's nice to just be able to pop that mag out and be like, okay, I think I need. Looks like I need 4 or 5. I mean, you get to where you can read them pretty easy.
Sure.
Pull them out as you're walking and cram them back in instead of grabbing a handful. And it's nice to be able to see how loaded you are versus
Absolutely.
you don't know if you got 1 or 10 in there.
Absolutely.
But overall, 1022 is a pretty good little gun. I like them. There's tons of barrel, tons of stocks that you can get for them.
Weren't you running the bolt action kind of style of this for a while?
I did. I had a Ruger American 22, which was it ran the same magazines. They've got a really good trigger. They've got like the safety built into like the Savage style Accu trigger style trigger on them. The only thing I didn't like about that gun, it was an absolute shooter. It shot lights out. But I didn't like that the bolt didn't lock with the safety.
Yeah.
So if you were carrying crossbody, or if you were carrying in the woods coon hunting or squirrel hunting,
lose your bolt.
Well, the bolt wasn't designed in a way that the release made it apt to lose. But I just got really annoyed with every time I turned around, my bolt was open.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, that part of it. Everything else I loved about the gun. If it would have had a bolt that locked with the safety, and I ended up buying a CZ after it for a bolt gun, just because it does it. I think mine's a 455 model, CZ 455, and it does have a locking bolt with the safety, and I like that a lot better. But I've gravitated back to the 1022s for squirrels. I like a bolt gun for coon hunting, just because you don't usually need to shoot fast.
Right.
But with the squirrels and follow-up shots when they're timbering is pretty handy.
Well, yeah. I like 12 gauge.
Yeah. Well, it's handy to have both when you're hunting.
You know, just if you're having trouble with your gun not shooting good groups, definitely look at that free floating aspect and just make sure you don't have your barrel in a pinch, or your stock's putting a bunch of pressure on it, or maybe your action screws may be too tight, too loose, unevenly torqued.
The 1022s do shoot a lot different. I haven't experienced it, but I've heard a lot of horror stories about mistorqued action screws, which they've only got one screw that holds the action to the stock.
Yep.
And I want to say mine's 25 or 30. I think I got a note written down. But whenever we were setting the gun up, let's talk about that. We kind of skipped over we set up the gun and took a little bit of video of that earlier, but let's go back over and talk over kind of your setup for putting the scope on the gun.
So, I mean, it's pretty much basic setup for any gun. If someone, I set up a lot of guns for friends and family. We didn't have any in epoxy today, which I would normally have done. We didn't have any, but that's all right. If you have trouble, we'll epoxy it tomorrow. From the receiver from the base receiver, what I would have liked to have done was seen and just put some epoxy on to your rail, just your basic rail. Just I'm talking, if you mixed up enough epoxy that it doesn't take much, like the amount that would barely round over on top of a penny, and I mix it up with a toothpick, and I will put such a light amount just on the rail itself that it's very little, and it's
So the goal of that epoxy is to what? Fill the gap and keep any vibration from movement?
anything. Yeah, it's not that you're epoxying it to your receiver so much. I think that there's a small amount that it does do that, but what you're trying to do is take any, say the receiver's milled at a 23-degree angle, but your rail
Well, like
is
I'm looking at the back of this rail right now, and like I can see daylight under the back of the rail.
Yeah, which you can see that the receiver kind of dives off, and the
And the
rail
rail's
is
straight.
straight, which I don't see that that's a problem. I'm talking about the curvature of the receiver like this.
Okay.
You know, say it's milled it's not much, but it is round at the top. And say it's a half a degree off from the rail itself, that could give it a rocking motion left to right. And what you're trying to do is correct that, if there's anything there. Or say it's the receiver, say the rail has too much, then you could fill that little gap down the center, one way or the other.
Because it doesn't seem like much, but I mean these are all like the receiver's aluminum, the rail's aluminum.
Yeah.
Like you talk about, and that's not.
Well, what the epoxy's doing is it's taking out any amount of imperfections that strengthen the 4 tiny screws. There are 4 tiny machine screws that are entirely holding your optic to your gun, which is critical. And that is the weakest part on any gun. I mean, any gun that has a rail that is that's one thing I like about the Browning X-bolts the most, is there's eight screws that hold them down instead of 4. And that's why they're called an X-bolt, is because they make an X on every one of those. Instead of having 2, they've got 4. And that's a huge selling point for me, for anyone. It really is. It takes the weakest part of a gun and it strengthens it double. But you've got 4 screws, very small screws, that we torque to 18 foot-pounds that are holding that rail on. Inch-pounds, sorry. But a little bit of epoxy on that rail, between the rail and the receiver, goes a long ways, and it really does strengthen that up a lot. And it just takes out any imperfections and kind of keeps anything from wiggling, moving left, right, back, forth, up or down. And then you torque that down to, it's 18. You can look it up in there's specs on each of these screws. You can I'm sure, Google what these machine screws, what the sizes they are, and there'll be a basic
Torque spec for that.
For that screw, and these were 18, as most are. Some are 22, but most of them are right there around 18 to 22.
And your torque wrench you run basically looks like a fat screwdriver.
Yeah. Yep, it's got a little dial that goes up and down, and the bottom of it is adjustable. Yep.
And it's a click type.
Yep.
Spin it till it clicks, and you're there.
It's a Wheeler Engineering. I think that's $120 kit that has the bits. It's got the alignment tools, which we'll talk about here in a second. It's got some levels. It's got the alignment tools, and it's got like a boring tool, so that if you were a little off, but we'll go to that here in a second. But we put the receiver, from the receiver, we put the rail on. We use Loctite. We use purple Loctite, which is what comes with this Wheeler, which is like a, let me back up here. We took the bolts, which they were used. You'd taken them out, and normally you wouldn't need to.
This rail had been on this gun before,
right?
Before I set it up with the extra high rings.
So anytime I'm reusing these little machine screws, I'll always use a little acetone, brake clean, something like that, and just a brush.
Degrease them.
Just degrease them a little bit, because you don't want any kind of gun oil, or, I mean, these holes go through the receiver. You've cleaned this gun. They're going to have some oil on them. We just want to get that oil off so that the Loctite's going to actually hold. So we cleaned those out. I sprayed your receiver, the female sides of the holes out, and just cleaned all that up really good. Then we cleaned your bolts up. Then we used a little bit of purple Loctite, which is what comes in this Wheeler kit. I think it would be like the blue, not the red, but the blue. It would be equivalent to that, but it's Wheeler's brand. We torqued them to 18 foot-pounds, inch-pounds, and then we threw your rings on there. And we torqued them down, and we got the alignment tools, which we've got some pictures.
I'll have some pictures on my Facebook page.
Okay, and these alignment tools are 1 inch
bar stock
that are
machined down to a tapered point.
There we go.
On one end. So you have two basically 4-inch long pieces of 1 inch diameter solid stock that have the last inch, 3/4 of an inch on one end on each of them, tapers down to a point.
To a perfect point that you put them in those rings facing each other, and it gives you a trueness so that you can see that your rings are true left and right, up and down, and you want those points to be angled right to each other with your caps on. You put your caps on, you torque them down, and you want to see that your rings. Otherwise, when you put your scope in there, if these rings aren't true,
it's going to have your scope in a bind.
Your scope's going to be in a bind. Then your adjustments aren't going to be true. I mean, you're going to be literally.
It's not going to track right.
You're going to be shooting around corners with that thing. I mean, it's not going to work right. So you can use that if you're off. It also gives you in this kit. It gives you a 1 inch piece of bar stock that's got a
lapping compound and a lapping handle.
Yeah, and then it also comes with a drill attachment, but I think I wore that out a long time ago. But you can attach it to your drill and kind of speed the process up a little bit. Aluminum goes really quick. Steel seems to take quite a while, but it can take those imperfections out. So if your alignment rods are a little off, you can fix them pretty quick, especially with aluminum. We didn't need to do that in this case. We were true. We pulled that back out. We pulled the caps completely off. We threw the scope in it. We leveled the scope really well, and then threw the caps back on your scope rings, and we torqued them down with everything leveled up, and then I guess we Loctited those. I use Loctite on all this stuff, especially with the semi-automatic. These little guns are going to take a lot of vibration. They're going to take a lot of.
Well, it's not just that; they take a beating too.
Right.
Like you look at the gun I built last year. I've been carrying it for a year hunting, and I mean, you don't try to abuse it, but at the same time, you're tossing it in and out of your truck. It's rode around in a dog box once or twice. It's been dropped more than once.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's been beat on. Like it looks like I drug it around behind the truck for a while.
And I will say. If this was my recommendation, I would steer clear of aluminum. Now, I don't know if they've held up. If you can get them to hold up, the
rings on mine are steel.
I would prefer steel. If this was my gun, aluminum's cheaper.
And the receiver that I bought is a aftermarket receiver. And it has the rail machined into the top of the rail. It's low. It's like this same height as what a factory rail is on a 1022, but it's machined into the receiver itself.
Gotcha.
And it's a machined receiver instead of like the factory rivers cast.
This gun that we just set up has got an aluminum rail and aluminum rings. And I'll be interested to know how well they hold up compared to steel. I know with a sniper rifle when I'm shooting long range, I've got some that have aluminum on them. But they're a lot heavier and they're a lot higher. They're not just cheap ones. You're going to get what you pay for. It's not a fun feeling when you drop your gun and then you go, well, I wonder how far that just got bumped off, you know? And I think a lot of times, I dropped my deer rifle last weekend and surprisingly brought it home, and at 450 it was dead on. So, and I dropped it on the scope from about 2 feet into dirt. It wasn't like it hit a rock or concrete, but it's still opening morning, and I dropped my gun about 2 feet. Luckily, it was good, and I didn't miss any deer.
Yeah.
But there again, that's where all these components and the epoxy and the Loctite and having everything true, and it's cheap insurance at the end of the day.
From guns in the past, before I'd learned more about setup. Like, it's not like you're shooting it and then one day all of a sudden, like, it's 3 foot to the left. Like, it's like a slow burn kind of deal. Like, it's start shooting and it's not quite as like you just.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I hadn't shot this thing at paper in a while, but I keep killing stuff and like it hits like it's a minute a coon.
Yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden it's not minute a coon anymore, and you've been missing stuff with the wild for it, and just thinking your shooting sucks, and then you get home, you start messing with it, and oh yeah, that's my whole scope's wiggling around on me.
Yeah, and that happens. It happens quite a bit, honestly, and it's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't use Loctite, it seems like it can happen a lot more often.
Yeah.
Usually, if I've used Loctite on something, I would not suggest red. That's gonna make it really hard to take things apart.
Gonna need some heat.
I've got red up there, and I've used it on some stuff, thinking, man, I'm never gonna take this apart. I'm building this for a while, and then I've had to use heat. Otherwise, you're gonna be stripping your Allen heads out. And I don't like really using a lot of heat on my guns or my scopes.
Yeah. Another good thing about a lot of the high-end scopes is like Loophole, Burris, I believe, Vortex. Like it's lifetime warranty. Like,
yeah,
it's a nice feeling.
It is. I try not to take advantage of that, but I've sent some back. I actually bought a used Burris one time, and I contacted them and said, hey, and I was honest with them, and they're like, okay, no problem. Send it back, and they sent me a brand new one within a couple days. No questions asked.
Pretty good service.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've pretty well covered it at this point. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Free floating the barrel, your action screws. I mean, these are things that I wouldn't get too far off in the weeds in unless your gun's not shooting good. But if you've got a Ruger 1022 that's not shooting good, I mean, that's rare. I mean,
yeah. Most of them shoot pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, for just the carbines, they usually shoot, 20, 30 yards. With most ammunition, 1.5 inches would be a bad group. 2 inches. Am I wrong?
I would think it'd be tighter than that at 20, 30 yards.
Yeah. I'm saying worst case scenario. Yeah. Like with an old gun that's been shot a lot, that hasn't been cleaned, and you're shooting cheap bulk ammo, I would think a 2-inch group at 30 yards would be pretty rough.
So this is a 50-yard target with high rings. I mean, what are those? Both of them. One of them's, that might have been me pulling there, but one of them's a 1-inch 3-shot group, and one of them's a
half-inch
5/8. 5/8. That's at 50 yards out of a stock carbine gun with stock trigger, stock everything. Just, I mean, they're pretty good shooters.
Of it, for sure.
Yeah, they're pretty good shooters. If I was gonna set out to build just with factory parts, not going custom, and on somewhat of a budget, Ruger's now making a 1022 carbon is what they call them. They're a factory, ultra lightweight, carbon fiber barrel that's threaded. They've got the lightweight Magpul stock, the same one I built and put on mine, which is about the lightest stock you can get for one of them. That's a nice hunting style. It's a plastic stock, but it's very serviceable. It's a nice little gun for the money.
I've got a buddy that brought one over the other day that it had a threaded barrel. It was a takedown. It had the top of the stock flipped up, and you could put magazines in it somewhere. I think.
Yeah, and the barrel like snaps into the butt.
Yeah.
And it packs down. Be a great little backpack iron sight gun.
Yeah.
But I've never been a fan of the takedowns just because.
Well, he had a suppressor on it and a scope. I mean, I don't know how often he planned on taking this one down, but still, it was so small and compact. I mean, as a gun that to not even take down, it was just handy, and it shot really well.
I had one compact or one takedown, and no matter what I did with it, every time I took it apart, every time I'd take it apart and put it back together, I'd have to re-zero. It wouldn't be a lot, but it would be a lot of times. It would be off of a minute of Squirrel. Like it might be shooting 1/2 inch high, or it might be shooting 3/4 inch low, or to the little to the left, or a little to the right. Like you never knew exactly. Like you didn't. I never had the confidence in it that, like, you could snap the barrel back on it and go to shooting a squirrel.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe a coon.
Yeah, you'd be all right with a coon, but I wasn't a big fan of them for what they are. They're super cool gun. Like if you're going to be taking them down, in my opinion, they're an iron sight gun.
Yeah,
super cool in that for that.
Yeah,
if you're putting an optic on them, I'm going to go with a fixed barrel that's bolted and torqued down in place.
I think
for repeatability.
I think you're better off there.
But yeah, that Ruger carbon with whatever good trigger parts you want to pay for in it, and then whatever is nice of a 3x9x40, or I mean, there's 2x7x32s. There's and as low as you can get it to the rail, the lowest strings you can find for it.
Man, I'm honestly a huge fan of these. I mean, there's a lot of good scopes out there, but Vortex, I couldn't speak higher of Vortex. They're Crossfire. Is that it? Vortex.
They've got Crossfires, Diamondbacks.
The Crossfire is super. I think I don't know what the price is on them, but it's their kind of one of their budget models. They may make a cheaper one, but they hold up to muzzleloaders well. I know I just built 10 muzzleloaders for a veterans hunt, and this is the second year in a row we've went with those, and they are just super good scopes for the money that I've dealt with 25 of them. I've yet to find a problem with them. They just track well, they shoot well, everyone can see good through them, and they're lifetime guaranteed. And like I said, I don't know what the price is, but I'm betting they're somewhere around that $100 bill, which would be, I mean,
it's good optic for the money for sure.
Absolutely,
definitely good value.
Absolutely.
If you've got any other questions about building or setting one up, I mean, don't be afraid to holler at me. I'm not that hard to get a hold of, so I think we've pretty well covered it.
Most of this stuff's going to apply to all rifles, whether it's your deer rifle, your squirrel rifle, whatever. It's all going to apply for the most part. The only difference here is that the parallax and your scope for a rim fire and shooting, a lot closer range as opposed to a deer rifle. With a deer rifle, you could get by with a lot of this stuff.
Well, shooting 2 inches high or 2 inches low with the deer rifle's not that big of a deal.
You're still on.
Yeah, you're still minute
still
a deer.
A dead deer, whereas you just missed the squirrel clean.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, we sure appreciate you listening, and let us know. Give us some feedback. What you think? Tell us we're dumb and we don't know what we're talking about. Thanks for the advice. Either way, let us know what you think, and take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.